Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are here with more notable names in African American history as part of our February Black History Month. Now, today, well, this was for Wednesday's video, but anyway, we are talking about the Tuskegee Airmen because these are one of the groups that the Trump White House sought to try to erase. And yeah, honestly, to Trump, I say, fuck off, fucker. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at this. We've got a number of sources here on Tuskegee Airmen. From the National Air and Space Museum. Before World War II, leaders of the Army Air Corps, predecessor to the modern day Air Force, barred African Americans from serving in uniform. Facing mounting public pressure in the years before the war, the U.S. government ordered the removal of some restrictions against black aviators. First, by opening civilian training programs in 1939, and then by accepting black pilots into racially segregated units of the Army Air Corps in 1941. A new base at Tuskegee, Alabama, became the center for the training program of the black air personnel. First with the 99th Fighter Squadron and later with the 332nd Fighter Group. African Americans contributed to the war effort, serving in the Mediterranean Combat Theater, flying from bases in North Africa and Italy while supporting operations against German forces. Later, the United States of America Air Force created the 477th Bombardment Group of African American B-25 Mitchell crews, which did not see combat. These were the Tuskegee Airmen. And they have a list of some of the Tuskegee Airmen. But Benjamin O. Davis Jr., Ahmed A. Sammy Rayner Jr., Charles McGee, Linkwood Williams, Lee A. Archer, Charles Hall, Noel F. Parrish, but yeah. This is from the National Park Service, Alabama, which they don't say a whole lot. It's very thin on the information they have. But yeah, before the African American military pilots became known as the Red Tails, they wore striped tails as they began their flight training in the Army's PT-17 Stearman biplanes. Their flying adventures started at Moulton Field in Tuskegee, Alabama, where the Army Air Corps conducted a military test to determine if African Americans could be trained to fly combat aircraft. They have orientation video. That's all they have. We don't know if they had so much more or not, but yeah. And then this is the National Museum Air Force. So yeah. They have reflecting American society and law at the time. The U.S. military remained racially segregated. During World War II, most African American soldiers and sailors were restricted to labor battalions or other support positions. One experiment in the U.S. Army Air Forces, however, demonstrated conclusively that African Americans, if given equal opportunities in training, could fly in, command, and support combat units as well as anyone. These men, known as the Tuskegee Airmen, served with distinction in combat, and they contributed to the eventual integration of the U.S. Armed Services, with the Air Force leading the way. So, yeah. And then they have some more stuff, but, yeah, links here. But let's head into the Wikipedia here. They were a group of African American military pilots, fighter and bomber, and airmen who fought in World War II. They formed the 332nd Fighter Group and the 477th Bombardment Group of the U.S. Army Air Forces. The name also applies to the navigators, bombardiers, mechanics, instructors, crew chiefs, nurses, cooks, and other support personnel. So it's not just the flyers of the planes. It is literally everybody who took part in keeping things running. The airmen received praise for their excellent combat record earned while protecting American bombers from enemy fighters. The group was awarded 3 Distinguished Unit citations. All black military pilots who trained in the U.S. trained at Grill Field, Kennedy Field, Moton Field, Shorter Field, and the Tuskegee Army Airfields. They were educated at the Tuskegee educated at the Tuskegee Institute, now known as Tuskegee University, which is located near Tuskegee, Alabama. Of the 922 pilots, 5 were Haitians from the Haitian Air Force, and 1 pilot was from Trinidad. It also included an airman born from the Dominican Republic and 1 in Jamaica. So a lot of Caribbean influence, not just solely African Americans born on the 48 contiguous U.S. states. But Haiti, Trinidad, I cannot speak, Dominican Republic, and Jamaica influences in there. The 99th Pursuit Squadron, later the 99th Fighter Squadron, was the first black flying squadron and the first to deploy overseas to North Africa in April of 1943. Remember, North Africa was a big staging ground in the war. While it's not often mentioned as having a part in the war, it was a big staging ground. Erwin Rommel was the general over the Nazi forces in Africa. What was his nickname? The Desert Fox, I think it was. But yeah. So there was a lot going on there. Your Moroccos, your Algerias. The movie. Clark Gable. I can't think of the name of the movie. But it's the one where a lot of people think he says, "Play it again, Sam." It's based on being in Africa during World War II. That's where he owns his bar. And Elsa, his former love interest, is there with another French pilot. Because they're from France. Gable's character, had moved to Morocco, took up ownership of the bar, and he's like, "I'm living here. I don't want anything else to do with the war." But yeah. That movie is based in Africa during World War II. Basically in Morocco, which is on your northwest coast of the continent of Africa. But yeah, northern Morocco also holds a connection to modern day Iberian Peninsula in Europe because the Straits of Gibraltar, one on the African side, one on the European side, they're also known as the Pillars of Hercules if you go back further. But yeah. But they would do much of the fighting in Africa. A lot of fighters, some bombers. They did some fighting in North Africa, but would later go into Sicily, which is just off the coast of, and other parts of Italy. Yeah. Sicily's just southwest of the boot of Italy. Yet, in America, there was still so much going on. Because remember, World War II, 1940s. So, still at home, even though they went and they bravely fought, they would come home and be subjected to Jim Crow laws and racial segregation and yeah. Even though they showed they were capable of fighting for America, they came home and they were still treated as lesser. But yeah. Before the Tuskegee Airmen, no African American had been a U.S. military pilot. In 1917, African American men had tried to become aerial observers but were rejected. African American Eugene Bullard served in the French Air Service during World War I because he was not allowed to serve in the American unit. Bullard returned to infantry duty with the French. So again, more proof of they got better treatment in Europe than they did in the U.S. I still don't get people that hate on them simply for something they have no control over. That does not make them any different. Melanin in the skin. You know, it's a simple chemical compound that just affects how sun is absorbed and processed. A lot of your European nations tend to be white because it's not near as warm. There's not near as much sunlight. There is sun, but yeah, it's not near as bad. Because you think Europe, you got to remember, you're going from Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Finland. If you want to go a little bit west into the Atlantic Ocean, there's even Iceland, which is even further north. All very light-skinned people, but as you travel through Europe, the further you go south, the darker skin you may see, because you get into places like Greece and Italy, you're going to see a little bit of color tone. They're still going to be fairly white, but there's a bit of color to the skin. You skip over the Mediterranean and get into Africa, and you start seeing people of darker colored skin because you're getting close to the equator, and so it's processing more of the sunlight. Because there's that much more. And don't get it wrong, I'm not saying it's like a tan necessarily, but genetically, something that usually is passed down to be able to sustain, to deal with all the extra sunlight, they have the extra melanin. So yeah. And you wouldn't think such a thing would divide people, because you're still human. All of you. Whether you like it or not. But of course, there are idiots who will say, hey, this is clearly evidence of how horrible they are. No, you're an idiot. Every time you flap your lips, you sit there and prove evidence of how horrible you are. So go shut the fuck up. God almighty. You know, in all honesty, people were just fellow humans. And it was the same with the Tuskegee Airmen. They showed they're just as good as anybody else. But they were often looked down upon as trying to fly because they weren't white. And it's like, seriously? How stupid do you have to be? Yeah. But they broke barriers. They were willing to put their lives on the line just as much as any other American. They showed they were just as capable as any other American. But, you know, this racist shitbag we've got in the White House now, he had no problem with trying to erase the information we had on the Tuskegee Airmen. Fuck the racist shitbag. He is one of the worst mistakes in American history. He should not be in office. And remember, feel free to knock the shit out of some Nazis, because they're not human. They don't deserve to be treated as human. But we'll go ahead and end this episode here. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting the links in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.